Hi everyone, what's up? Chelsea fans, I hope you're all feeling good. This is Xavier Mbuyamba, and you're listening to the Blue Day podcast. Enjoy.
Fellow Chelsea supporters, here at the Blue Day podcast, it gives me great pleasure to introduce this individual on the show today. He made 268 appearances for the club, scoring 7 goals. He won 3 trophies for Chelsea, winning the Second Division Championship twice in 84 and 89, plus the Full Members' Cup in 1986. Here is Joe McLaughlin. Joe, welcome to the Blue Day podcast. How are you?
I'm good, Keith. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Joe, it's an absolute pleasure, honestly. Thank you for your time. I want to start the interview, if I can, by asking, did you have any particular influences when it came to deciding to become a professional footballer?
Yeah, I think there was a obviously when I was growing up there was lots of players that you kind of liked, Kenny Dalglish, and I was lucky enough to play against Kenny when he was at Liverpool. Billy McNeil was a big idol of mine. So was John Gregg, believe it or not. So he was the Rangers captain. Billy McNeil's the Celtic captain. But I kind of admired them both because they both played for Scotland, and you didn't really see a lot of football on TV back in those days, Keith. So you maybe saw the Scotland-England game on telly. You didn't see a lot of games. So I used to go and watch my local club, Morton, which is where I came from. It's the club I joined Chelsea from. And obviously there was players that played for Morton that I admired. In fact, some of them I still see when I go to the odd game at Capello. There was a guy called Billy Osborne, Sugar Osborne as he was called, because he worked in the sugar refinery as well as playing football. So he was called Sugar Osborne, and he was a bit of a legend. And I seen him at the game a few weeks ago. And a guy, Alan McGraw, who lives not too far from me, believe it or not. Alan McGraw, again, another Morton legend in the kind of 60s. I mean, I was born in 60, but his kind of ultimate 67 was his kind of era, 67, 68. But Morton were in the First Cup, and believe it or not, played Chelsea in the First Cup way back, I think it was 68, 69. And my dad took me to the game at Morton at Capello. So I always had, and believe it or not, I always had a wee bit of affinity. People all say, "Oh yeah, I supported Chelsea. I love Chelsea." I did, because when Morton played them, I loved the Chelsea kit. It was, I think they were playing in Morton. I think were playing. I'm not too sure I might be wrong. Back in the day, the away team wore their home kit, and the home team had to wear a kind of change kit. That might have been in the kind of late 60s. But I remember Morton wearing a kind of luminous yellow kit, and Chelsea wearing the blue shorts with the big white strip. And that Christmas, Santa unbelievably brought me a Chelsea kit. Can you believe that Santa would know that I would want a Chelsea kit that year? So in 68 or 69, bear in mind I'm only 8 or 9, so Santa was still a big thing. And I got my first ever kit was a Chelsea kit, which was amazing, So when you tell that story, people just start throwing up, oh yeah, it's really cringy, you know what I mean? Well, it's actually true, that was my first ever kit, was a Chelsea kit. So it was kind of, it was nice, when I joined Chelsea, because I still love the kit, and I still love the kit, you know what I mean? I loved all the kit that we had. Maybe not the Chelsea collection one, that was designed for 1 year. It was a wee bit kind of cheap nylon-y stuff, you know what I mean? But listen, it was great. It was an honour just to play for Chelsea. Was an honour. That's the thing, to play for a club so big, and again, coming from a small club. Although, in saying that, Morton were in the Scottish Premier League at the time. So we weren't. I wasn't coming from the lowest Scottish league to Chelsea. Was coming from the highest Scottish league to Chelsea, who were in the second division. Which I actually was thinking, do I really want to join Chelsea? Because Arsenal had come in, put an offer in, which the club had turned down. So Terry Neal was the manager of Arsenal, and I was thinking, right, okay, Celtic had come in and made an offer. And again, I'm not Celtic or Rangers or, I'm not a religious person who want to join a club because of religion or because of that. But back in those days, that was the way it was, believe it or not. It would have been, Rangers wouldn't have come in for me back in those days. And that's a fact, because it just didn't happen. Maurice Johnson probably would, the first guy who ever played for Celtic, Rangers, that kind of religious kind of breakthrough. But it was, again, I was delighted that Celtic had come in for me, because growing up here and Billy McNeil being one of my idols, he was the manager of Celtic at that time. So it was good, and I was having my career had started off quite well, and I had clubs interested. Not saying I wanted to leave Morton, but that was the whole kind of ethos of the club. They sold players. They brought young players through the youth system and sold them. The year before, my friend Neil Orr, he had gone to West Ham for 350,000, which in 1982 was an unbelievable amount of money, and I was supposed to go that year too, but again, it all kind of fell through. And then the following year, as I say, there was a few clubs getting mentioned: Newcastle, Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea. All these kind of clubs were kind of coming in again, and Celtic again were still sniffing about. But I actually thought I was going to sign for Celtic, because Billy McNeil had spoken to me when we played Celtic in a game. He had pulled me after the game and said, "Look, we want to sign you, blah blah blah." Back in those days, that was a kind of acceptable. You know what I mean? And I was absolutely over the moon, because here's a guy centre back, Scottish international. He wants to sign me, and I just thought that would be a great move. Anyway, he also wanted to sign Pat Nevin. So, and he told me this, he said, "I'm going to sign you. I want to sign Pat Nevin, blah blah blah." And I was like, and I didn't really know Pat. I'd heard of him, but I didn't really know him. Anyway, long story short, Bill O'Neill then phones me back, and he said, "Look, this is all falling through." He said, "The board are not going to pay the money, and I think it was 100 grand more looking for." That was the kind of, whatever it happened, they got offered, they turned down 300,000 the year before from Arsenal, and now they're going to accept 100,000 from Chelsea, from Celtic. But Celtic are not going to pay the money, they said, because one of the directors didn't want me and Pat Nevin, didn't think we were good enough to come. So Billy McNeil, obviously, he's been undermined massively. So Billy McNeil is now thinking, if I can't sign players that I want to sign, I'll be leaving. Now, this is true. Billy McNeil told me this on the phone. He said, "If I can't sign you guys, I'll not be here." And I was like, right, okay, what do I do now? So that's me kind of in limbo, Celtic. Literally by chance, the manager said he just had another phone call from the assistant manager at Chelsea, Ian McNeil. Would that be interested in coming down and having a look round Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. They're prepared to pay the money. Never seen me play. Only seen me play on TV and in the Scottish under-21s. So they'd never actually come up and watched me in a Premiership game in Scotland. But they'd spoken to Jock Stein, who was the Scotland manager, and Jock Stein apparently gave me a good report. So that was good enough for John Neal, sadly dead, and Ian McNeil, sadly dead as well. And they signed, they were looking to sign a whole new team, they want to bring in as many players as they can. So, and I was on the list, Pat Nevin was on the list.
Yeah.
A few others, Kerry Dixon, Dave Speedy, Spackman, these records. So they're telling me all these names, and I had no idea other than Pat Nevin, So me and my wife were like, what do we do? We're going down to London to meet, this guy from Chelsea, but Bill McNeil's still saying the deal at Celtic might be on, and what do you do? So Bill McNeil actually said, Joe, go down to London and, have a good weekend, listen to what they've got to say. I'll know more on Monday or Tuesday whether this is going to happen or not. If I can't get you and Pat Nevin, I'll not be here. He said, but you need to have something else lined up. So we go down to London, have a weekend, great weekend, wine and dine. John Neal was one of the nicest men, nice and a great manager, I must admit, just an unbelievable guy. Coaching, everything's changed obviously, but John Neal and Ian McNeil were really, really good people, and that was it. You could tell they were good people, and I really wanted to sign for them, but at the same time I'd already kind of half agreed to sign for Celtic, so that was at the back of my mind. And then Bill McNeil, actually I was in the Lily Hotel, which is on Lily Road, or I don't know what it's called now, but it was the Lily Hotel, the shittiest hotel in London, I must admit. So we weren't in the Dorchester or the whatever. We were in the Lily. Got a phone call from Bill McNeil saying, Joe, he said, I'm leaving. He said, I'll be resigning on Monday. And I was absolutely shocked, because it was like, I've kind of hummed and hawed about Chelsea, and I'm not sure, So anyway, Ian McNeil, again, half an hour later, Ian McNeil phone said, right, what were you doing? Are you signing? Are you, whatever? I said, yeah, okay. I said, well, I'll be signing, So Monday morning, we go into Stamford Bridge and sign the deal, But again, if Bill McNeil had said, I still want you, I'll get you, then I would have probably have gone back up to Glasgow, which was kind of not saying, it was just the way it seemed was going to work out, that I'll play for Celtic, I'll hopefully get a Scotland cap, but as it turned out, signed for Chelsea that day. I think Pat Nevin came down the next day from Clyde, and we kind of met. But as I say, met Nigel Spackman, Dave Speedy, Kerry Dixon, all that kind of group that signed, kind of met them. But it was really John Neal, as I say, I was so pleased, that it worked out that way, and people think I was disappointed that it never worked out for Celtic, but Celtic or Chelsea, Celtic and Chelsea, I mean, to me, the fact that Chelsea were in the second division and almost got relegated to the third division, I probably wouldn't have signed, obviously, if they'd have got relegated to the third division, because they were a kick in the arse off of getting relegated to, the old third division, which, who'd have thought that could have happened? You know what I mean? But they escaped, and as I say, with the new kind of squad that John Neal was looking to build, I still thought Chelsea were still one of the biggest clubs in England, and obviously they are one of the biggest clubs in England. But yeah, it was kind of strange the way it all kind of worked out. But that first year was, it was an amazing year, to have all those new players, and we all gelled so quickly. And yeah, arguably that was one of the most memorable years in my whole career. That first year at Stamford Bridge. Okay, people say, it was League Two, Chelsea were shit, well, were we? We actually cruised that league, we destroyed it. And then, okay, Sheffield Wednesday ran as close, but we're still, us in Sheffield Wednesday were so far ahead. It was ridiculous. And then the next year, Keith, we actually thought we were going to win back-to-back titles, and every single one of us, believed that we could win the first division or the Premiership as it is now. So I don't know the exact stats, but I know there's been a few. I think there's only been 2 teams that have won League Two and then League One, successive years. So I'm not saying we were talking about it, but we all believed that we could win the first division. And I think we finished 6th that year, unfortunately. But we all had that belief that we would win back-to-back titles, or we could win back-to-back titles. Which might sound a bit daft, but there wasn't one game that certainly I went out, or and I know Kerry and Eddie and Pat, we all went out believing that we could win every game, whether it was Arsenal, whether it was Man United, Liverpool. We went out knowing that we could win the game, you know what I mean? And that was the kind of mentality that I think was in that squad for those 3 or 4 years that we were all together. So, we were really disappointed that we didn't win the league and we didn't win the first division. That would have been massive. But I think we lost at home to West Ham. It was Easter weekend. We were 3rd, and I think we lost to West Ham on the Saturday. And then Easter Monday, we lost 4-1 to West Ham on the Saturday at Stamford Bridge, which was a blow. And my old mate, Frank McAvenny and Cotty, who were a formidable partnership, to be fair. West Ham were no mugs. Some Billy Bonds, what an idol he was, Billy Bonds. I think he was about 43 when, in that game, and still charging about. And he lived in Bromley, fun enough. I used to see him in Bromley quite a lot. But yeah, to lose that weekend, that kind of burst the bubble a wee bit, because losing 6-0, I hate to say it, the highest defeat, 6-0. It might have been 7. You need to correct me if I'm wrong. Easter 83, 84, QPR playing on the car park, because it was the worst surface in the whole of football, not just English football. It was the worst ever. Just 1G Astrograss. So it was honestly like playing on concrete. Yeah, I'm not saying that's the excuse, but when you play on that surface with a pair of training shoes on, but I couldn't wear those. Pat and the ball playing players were fine, but when you're 6'3" and 200 odd pounds, then moving about on that surface is hard. But anyway, Steve Francis was in goal. I just remember Steve Francis. Unfortunately, Eddie must have been injured. I don't think it was his serious injury. I'm not too sure. But I know Steve Francis was in goal for those 2 games, and I'm not blaming Steve Francis at all. Steve Francis was an excellent goalkeeper, but to come in, for those 2 big games, and then to lose 4-1 and 6, it might have been 7. I hate to say that. 6 sounds a wee bit better than 7, but that weekend destroyed the chance of winning the league back to back. So that was a bit of a balloon buster, but QPR, how they got away with playing on that surface, the only reason they won games was because they trained on it. They were used to do it. It was ridiculous. It was the worst surface. Everyone came off with knees bleeding, hips bleeding, because you slipped on it. It was like basically being on concrete. It was that bad. But listen, if you were they had a couple of good players, Gary Bannister and John Byrne. These guys were good. The QPR were no mugs. Steve Wicks was playing, I think, that day. Alan McDonald. I think Alan's sadly dead. But they had a lot of good players. So it was a bit of a disgrace to lose by quite big scores. But again, it was our first year in the top division, and I think we acquitted ourselves pretty well. All things being equal, I think we did pretty well. We were just so disappointed not to win back-to-back titles, and that was something that we all spoke about. You know what I mean? We could have been one of the only other clubs to win back-to-back second and first division titles. Who does that? You know what I mean? It's and they were trying to kind of think. But someone said Forest, but I don't think Forest. I know they won back-to-back European Cups, but I don't think they won the second division and the first division. I'm not too sure, but I know there's been a couple of teams who have done it. But yeah, it was just great memories.
Just a couple of things that you mentioned during that I just wanted to bring up. You mentioned the likes of Pat Nevin and Kerry Dixon as well, because they came in that same summer. What are your memories of playing in the same team as those two individuals?
Again, all the guys that came in that year. I mean, Kerry and I are still good friends. I mean, although I messaged him the other day then and he bumped it. But Pat, as I say, I've been down to the club a few times to games. Pat and I signed on the same day, Keith, as I've already said. And we actually shared a house for several months in Hemel Hempstead, believe it or not, which is, Hertfordshire borders. It was nice, but it was a wee trek to the training ground because the M25 wasn't even open then. So through the country roads, through Denham, Buckinghamshire and all these kind of places and along, I think it was the A40 and in towards Heathrow Airport. So it was a wee trek to get to the training ground. But Pat and I shared the house because my wife was still working, so she was up here, we were selling the house, so she was up here, I was down there, Pat was single, so me and him were cutting about like, two kings. But so, I mean, Pat was a phenomenal player, I'll be honest. Pat Nevin, unbelievable skill. I mean, just unique, because there's not really that type of player anymore. You know what I mean? Pat was the dribbling king. I mean, you could never get the ball off him. Which sometimes upset Kerry and Dave Speedy. Because they were like, "Oh, Pat, come on, you need to beat him for the 10th time. Just cross it. We'll try and score." But Pat was phenomenal ability. I think Dixon and Speedy would have rather someone just put the ball in the box a bit more often so they could score more goals. But they scored enough goals, and Pat scored a good few goals. Although people always ask me about the worst penalty they've ever seen when he took a penalty against Man City. And you kind of see it now, but Pat just stood with not even a stride to the ball, just one step to the ball. And he side-footed the penalty. And it was you were looking at your watch to see if the ball was actually going to touch the net. But anyway, it wasn't going that fast, so the keeper managed to save it. He had a cup of tea, then he saved it. But we were winning 4-1, so it didn't make any difference. But, we would have rather beaten 5-1 than 4-1. And I think we signed Clive Wilson, which, again, was strange. Clive was left back and Pat was kind of wide right, So Clive must have had a good night that night, or Pat had a bad night and Clive had an exceptionally good night. So we signed Clive Wilson, who was an absolutely brilliant player. I mean, brilliant. Full Members' Cup final as well. I know I shouldn't really mention the Full Members' Cup final because Chelsea fans try and sweep it under the carpet, you know what I mean? Because it's it's not the Champions League, or the Full Members' Cup. It was only 80,000 at the game, you know what I mean? So it was somebody actually said there might have been 90,000 at the game because it was a pay as you go kind of game. There was no tickets. It wasn't like an old ticket. You could come in, and Wembley was, I mean, it was packed to the rafters. And again, I've watched that a few times. It's a hell of a good game. I mean, it's a really good game. And again, I've said to a few people, played in a cup final, beat Man City 5-4. People think it's Man City as they are today, you know what I mean? But they don't know. They weren't the Man City they are today. But still, they were still they were still a worthy team to get to a cup final. And Billy McNeil was the manager, which, again, was another kind of, so him and I were talking before the game, and, Mick McCarthy, Mick McCarthy ended up going to Celtic. But, there was lots of really good players playing in that game. And I've watched a load that cup final loads of times. And the standard of play is actually very, very high. I mean, Pat Nevin was unbelievable. If you watch Pat Nevin in that game, just unbelievable. Kevin McAllister on the other side. Pat was on the left, I think, that day. But again, great memories of a cup final. And most people don't know, Keith, that we actually played the day before that. So you hear people moaning about, we played a game on the Thursday night, we've got a European game on the Thursday night, and then we had to play on the Sunday. Well, we had to play a league game on the Saturday. So did Man City. Man City played Man United on the Saturday. We played Southampton away on the Saturday. We won 1-0. Guess who scored the goal? So one of my vital goals against no less Peter Shilton. So right. I was extremely happy that day. Yeah. I just scored the winner on the Saturday against Southampton. We've got a cup final the next day, but we're not moaning saying, we've played on the Saturday, we've got to play on the Sunday as well, you know what I mean? Not one person said a word. We would have rather have not played the next day, but, and that was only in case you got an injury on the Saturday, not because we were tired and we weren't going to play, and that's what kind of spoils football. They're so mollycoddled these days, you know what I mean? They're tired, but they've got every bit of sports science, every bit of help they can have to play well. Back in the day, it was just a much simpler game, you know what I mean? It was just, you turn up, you train, you played, you're told to play. We used to play on Boxing Day, so you play on Boxing Day, you play on New Year's Day, so you play back-to-back games quite regular. But as I say, it's different times, but, Kenny Dixon, to me, how I know he went to the World Cup, but, he never got a chance, you know what I mean? And his goal scoring record, to me, was right up there with Lineker and I mean, I don't even know who else was ahead of him then, but, he was the top scorer. At least he got to the World Cup, but he just never really got a chance to say that. And, I guess Lineker, yeah, he was the guy in possession of the jersey, and but I don't think. To me, Kerry Dixon had as much about his game than Gary Lineker. Kerry was the fastest 6'2" striker you've ever seen, and that's undeniable. The guy was just electric. I've never seen him lose a sprint in the whole 7 years I was at Chelsea, because anyone who fancied taking him on, he'd be quite happy, So he was electric. Was he the most skillful? Did he have Pat Nevin's skill? No. But does he need Pat Nevin's skill? No. He just needs to score goals, and that's what he did. I mean, he could score goals from in the box, outside the box, with his head, but he doesn't really want to keep the ball up and beat people and do that. It's like people say to me sometimes, again, you're one of the best with the ball in that way. You were, don't need to be good with the ball. You know, I just need to defend. I just need to stop Gary Lineker, Mark Hughes, Ian Ross. I just need to stop these guys from scoring, you know what I mean? That's my job. You know, I don't need to set up chances for Dave Speedy, Kerry Dixon. You know, that's up to the guys in front of me. You know what I mean? They're not, you know, I just need to defend and stop people scoring. That was my job, and that was it. You know, very simplistically, but say, you know, Kerry Dixon, Dave Speedy were a phenomenal partnership. You know, Dave Speedy, the best in the air for somebody who was 5'5" you've ever seen. I mean, the guy was amazing, you know what I mean? And some of the goals that Speedy scored, and, you know, and I like Dave Speedy. You know, I really did. Dave Speedy and I got on really well. But I think hold on a wee second. Don't know if you can see.
Yes, I can see that, yes.
So, the accidental footballer, right? So, this was given to me by a guy who works in a local park.
Yeah.
Right, which is bizarre. I mean, absolutely bizarre.
That book's been plugged a few times on the podcast. For those of you that would like to know, it is Pat Nevin's autobiography called The Accidental Footballer. Of course, we had Pat on the show a few months ago talking about his book, but also talking about his Chelsea career. And so the book is still available if you want to buy it on Amazon or. I'm
not plugging his book, by the way.
No, I didn't say you was at all. No.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, am I plugging his? So I've got this book by a guy I played with. It was given to me by the guy in a local park. So I'm running around the park. The guy in a tractor comes up, and I'm thinking, right, you know, stops the tractor, and he's like, "You're Joe McLaughlin, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, my wife is your uncle's, one of them, kind of your uncle's nephews, some, right, okay." So he's kind of almost related to me. He's an English guy, which again, it's fine. You know, he's up here. And he said, "I'm reading Pat Nevin's book and you're in it." And I was like, "I'm in it?" And I said, "Yeah, we lived together for 7 months." "Oh, he never said that. He just said, you and Dave Speed had a fight at the training ground." Now, I've not read this, Keith. I must admit, it kind of props up my printer. My printer's kind of hanging off the back. So that inch kind of props up the printer a wee bit. But, Pat, I will read it at some point. Okay, so I will get round to reading it. So don't worry, it's there. But he never mentioned the fact that we lived together for 7 months. But he did mention the fact that Dave Speed and I had a fight at the training ground, you know, which I find, you know, I don't know what page it's on, but you know, I'm actually going to look at it later on and find out what page it's on. But it makes out as if Dave Speed and I didn't get on, but Dave Speed and I were good friends. I got on well with everyone, but yeah, we had arguments. I think that's what made us so competitive. That we all drove each other on. We all moaned at each other. Dave Speedy was the moaniest guy in the team, you know, by a country mile. But he played for Scotland. I mean, you look at Dave Speedy's career, Liverpool, after Chelsea, Liverpool, Scotland, you know, all these guys were on the periphery of international football, and most of them played in their national team. You know, Joy Jones, Mickey Thomas, Eddie Niezwicki, you know, you could go through that team. The ones that never played in the national teams, you know, you wonder why. I mean, I was in a few Scotland squads, but never got selected to play. But I look back and I think, well, McLeish and Miller were the partnership for years. Aberdeen, you know, they went. Alan Hansen was the next one. And then I might have got a mention as the kind of fourth choice. So I had 3 guys in front of me, you know, who were exceptionally good. Alan Hansen, to me, was he is the epitome of what centre-backs are now, because he could play with the ball. He was the best, bar none, because he could defend, he was quick, he could come out from the back. So he was the modern day centre back in the 80s. But Alan Hansen, he couldn't even get a regular game for Scotland because of McLeish Miller. So, as good as Chelsea were doing, I was disappointed, but it wasn't like, I'm disappointed because there's a couple of guys who are shit playing in front of me. These guys were good. So, you just had to accept it. You look at Steve Bruce. Steve Bruce never won a single cap. And he won a B cap. He never got an international cap. And he was arguably Man United's best player for a couple of seasons. Gary Pallister, Steve Bruce. Steve Bruce never went to England. Gary Pallister did. Bruce never. And then you look at Colin Pates. Me and Colin Pates were the kind of preferred partnership for the first few years. Colin Pates was arguably, again, he was a modern day centre-back. Patesy had unbelievable skill. Colin Pates was up there with the most skillful players at the club, but he was the left-sided centre-back. So it was Colin left side, I was right side. I was the big number 5. He was the silky one. That was the way it kind of was. But as I say, playing for your country, you would have thought a lot of people expect you. You should be playing for your country. You're Chelsea. But again, it was just one of those things. But Pat Nevin, Dave Speedy, Scotland players. So nearly every other guy in the team was playing for the country. Nigel Spackman again, unfortunately, Nigel, I don't think he got a cap, but he was good enough. You know what I mean? But there's probably 3 or 4 other guys who, along those times, were good enough too. But so many good players in that squad, Keith. It's kind of hard. But I'm going to read Pat's book, The Accidental Footballer. I'm going to ask him about that as well. The Accidental Footballer. So it didn't seem too much an accident. I could have maybe said that accidental footballer, but he can't because he had unbelievable ability. So I'm wondering, what was the accident? Was he wanting to be a rock star? Was he wanting to be an artist? What was the accident? That caused him to be a footballer. So that's going to be my question to Pat Nevin when I read the book. I just put that under, keep the printer up again. There you go. Yeah. So we had a very fortunate to have a very good team for a good few years.
Well, I wanted to ask actually, in regards to that team, part of your debut season, the 83-84 season, one of the highlights of that season, Chelsea got promoted, but we beat Leeds United on our last home game, I believe. It was 5-0 at Stamford Bridge. You've summed up just a few of those players, but in general, how good was that team from the second division going back into the first division under John Neal, with John Hollins there as well? What sort of your memories of that particular season?
Yeah, as I say, I think that team obviously acquitted itself very well the year we came up, and when we played in the first division, we did exceptionally well. And you say, I forgot John Hollins, so John Hollins was an integral part of the team in that first year, right back. I learned a lot from John Hollins. And sad as this might sound, things started to go bad when he took over as manager. John Neal get moved upstairs, and then the whole balance of the squad, everything changed. Because looking back, I was 22, 23, and John Hollins was 37, 38 maybe. Still quite young to be taking over as the manager. He wasn't going to play anymore. So you've lost a right back, you've lost a player. I think he could have played on because he was a fit guy. He could have probably played another year. But the whole balance of the club started to shift because John Hollins wanted to bring in some players. John Neal wasn't happy about moving upstairs, and quite rightly so. So things started to not fall apart, but when you start bringing in players and moving players and Steve Wicks was brought in, and started bringing, and look, Steve Wicks is a really good player, but none of us felt we needed Steve Wicks because, he wanted to play Colin Pates at left back, he wanted to play Steve Wicks and myself, it just upset the whole balance of the squad, and he brought in, a really nice man. Ernie Wally was a really nice guy, but talking about a guy who, I'm not saying, he was a nice man, but he wasn't right for that squad. That squad were doing fine. They didn't need to be, attacked or fitter or, everything was going along pretty good. But suddenly we weren't fit enough. Suddenly we were training more. Suddenly the training was all changed. It was more just running. There was less football. There was more running. There was more fighting. There was more people upset. It just wasn't at the same place, So things started to go downhill from there, and that's a fact. It wasn't as enjoyable to come into training every day as it was. But listen, you're getting paid to go and do it. You just go out, and I'm not saying that was every day or it was just things had changed, and when things that are going well get changed for no real reason, that was a big mistake. And I think Ken Bates made a big mistake. Moving John Neal upstairs that year was a mistake, and giving John Holland the job too early. Another year would have done the world a good, because we would have solidified even more. But again, to start bringing in new players and breaking up that kind of team was kind of pointless, and that was my kind of biggest criticism of what happened early on. Now that upset other players, so other players were getting bumped out, and people were getting more money. And it, unfortunately, Keith, most things, as the unhappiness descends, most of it was down to money, because these are the things when you're not getting paid a lot. And Chelsea weren't big payers back in those days. It was big money compared to what I was getting £150 a week up here, and I went down to Chelsea for £450 a week, which to me was a no-brainer. That's a good salary. £150 a week. My dad was earning £150 a week working in the container terminal. So £150 a week up here. I was getting that to be a footballer. He was getting that to be a labourer in the container, the docks. But I go down to Chelsea and I'm getting £450 a week, not realising at the time that house prices are about 10 times higher than down there than they are up here. So you do need that £450 a week was about the same as getting £150 a week up here. Anyway, that being said, what kind of again upset a load of things? We were all on low contracts. I don't know, I've not listened to Pat's podcast, but Pat and Evan was one of the kind of integral parts of not causing me to be unhappy, but opening my eyes a wee bit. So Pat and I were good friends. We were all on roughly the same money, according to Ken Bates. 400, 450, 500, blah, blah, blah. That's because players back then, people want to tell you what they're on, funnily enough. People want to tell you I'm getting, like Kerry would openly say he's the highest paid player at the club. He's a striker, fair enough. That's great. Some people would never tell you, like Eddie in his wiki. Eddie's godfather of my kids, and I'm godfather of his kids. Eddie would very guarded. Eddie would never talk about money. Very, he was less open than a lot of us. Anyway, so the money side of it came up. So when John Holland started signing these players, there was a few people starting to blab out what they were getting paid, and it was like, what, So they're bringing in these new players on loads more money than we were getting. So Ken Bates had a problem. He's then got to start saying, right, Pat Nevin's got a 4-year deal. Joe McLaughlin's got a 4-year deal. You know, they're in their 3rd year now. You know, so new contracts were getting laid out on the table. But back in those days, you know, it's like your contract, you were tied to that club for life, almost, you know what I mean? So, you know, the Bosman ruling wasn't even out then. So your contract was your contract, and it was kind of weird. You know, restraint of trade kind of comes to mind. You know, you couldn't leave, your contract couldn't be up and you go and sign for another club. You know what I mean? You couldn't walk away. So you were tied almost. Anyway, so we all offered new contracts because we'd done quite well that 2nd year. We'd all done quite well. And the third, so 4 years, it's you're entering into your kind of 3rd year of the contract. So Ken Bates gets everyone in to sign new contracts. So we're getting more money, and rightly so. So everyone's got a time to come into Stamford Bridge to discuss a new contract. No agents back then, by the way. You know, agents were maybe just coming in and, you know, but no agents, nobody advising you about what to do. You know, you were just on your own, you know, just a guy, yeah, I'll take it, I'll not, whatever. So I remember Pat, Steve Wicks had signed, or Mickey Hazard, I can't mind, there was a few guys, and there was a lot of figures getting bumped about and stuff, you know what I mean? And we were on 400, 450, you know, whatever. But Ken Bates had said, this is what the bulk of the squad are on roughly the same money. So there's nobody's going to get upset about the money and stuff and all that. So I remember I'd just gone in, sat down with Ken Bates, who I got on really well with, by the way. You know, I had a lot of time for Ken Bates until you end up knowing you're getting played like a 2-bob guitar. So, yeah, everyone's going to be on the same. So you're on 450. Everyone's going to be on 650, 700, top man 750, which, don't get me wrong, I was pleased about. You know, I felt genuinely happy that you're getting rewarded, you're getting good money, you know, for what you've done. So Pat had been in before me and had signed. So I can't remember the secretary's name, Sheila Marston, I think her name was. So I'm just going in to meet Ken Bates and Pat. No, sorry, I've already gone in. Ken Bates had told me everyone's on roughly the same. He said Kerry might go on a bit more because he scores the goals. Fair enough. So I've gone through the corridor to sign everything with Sheila Marston. Pat Nevin has just gone in and signed. So, and this is something Pat might not remember, but I remember as clear as day. And that's the thing that started me on my mission, because as I'm walking to sign, Pat's come out and he said, "Don't sign for anything less than $950." And I was like, I'm walking into the room to sign the contract for $750, and I've been told that everyone's on the same apart from Kerry. Well, clearly everyone's not on the same apart from Kerry. But it was almost like one of those moments in time you just wanted to say, what? You know, but that wee corridor at Stamford Bridge, as Pat walked by, right? So I've gone in. So how can you... I'm unhappy. I've not even signed the contract. And in that split second, I'm going, what the fuck am I doing now? You know, am I signing this? Am I, you know... And I was like, do I believe Pat, or is he joking? You know what I mean? And so in the end, and there's no mobile phones back then. You can't phone a friend. You can't phone you know, and say, what do I do? So I signed the contract. I literally just signed it, walked out the door, and my chin's on the floor because Pat's told me not to sign for anything less than $950. You know, now should Pat have said that? If he never said that, I would have been none the wiser. Not on that day anyway. I might have been wiser through the week or the next couple of weeks, but that was what it was like. I just signed a contract for another 2 years and I'm unhappy already. But then I'm thinking, why am I unhappy? I'm getting more money. So I'll try to see the benefits that, but it's not that. I've basically just been lied to. That's what I felt. I've just been lied to, and I wasn't happy because Pat's getting more. Not that I deserve more than Pat, but Ken Bates told us, you're all on the same apart from Kenny. Well, we're not all on the same apart from Kenny. That's just nonsense. So, that kind of put me on, right, okay, I'm going to try and play my best and see what happens. That was my kind of, right, I'm not just going to lie down and take it. I'm going to fight and I'm going to play my best and try and see if somebody will buy you. That was what I was going to do. And that's effectively what I did. Yeah, I was annoyed that Ken Bates could do that, but, maybe Pat shouldn't have said anything. But he did, and it happened, and, that's what I kind of remember of how Chelsea kind of treated their players, There was like that. It wasn't right,
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ken Bates is a businessman. He got us all to sign these new contracts, which, again, hindsight, I would never have signed a new contract. But again, it was, the money was good. I enjoyed being at the club, but it was starting to fall apart, and that was in the kind of third year. And again, mostly down to the kind of the atmosphere. John Holland started bringing in new players. Steve Clark came in, Gordon Jury. Now, again, lots of Scottish guys, and really good players, Jukebox, Steve Clark. We actually had a good amount of Scottish lads at the club at that time. Craig Burley was coming through, Billy Dodds. But it was just, there was something wrong within the club and the way it was being ran. Training wasn't good. As I say, the boys weren't enjoying training and stuff. And it just started to kind of disintegrate a wee bit, which was unfortunate.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.